O'Neill, not Reimer.
I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Yeah.
We have not received any other business items since the agenda was published.
Okay. Does anyone have any other business items they'd like to add at the table? So, I had one. I just wanted to add Lafarge Lake tree work this week. Anyone else?
All right. So we'll add that as other business item number 2.
Thank you.
The first item is the minutes of the council and committee meeting held on Monday, May 30th. Recommendation is to approve.
So moved. Moved by Councillor Towner, seconded by Councillor Osmondson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The next item on the agenda is a delegation. I would like to invite Shane Peachman, president of the Hyde Creek Watershed Society, to please come forward. Mr. Peachman will be discussing the Society's presence in Coquitlam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Peachman. At this point in time, I'm chairing the meeting just as acting mayor. We do a bit of a rotation, but I would like to pass the chair to Mayor Stewart just for greetings.
Oh, okay.
How are you doing?
Very well. Good to see you folks in the parade on Sunday.
Good.
And as always, the work that you do in our community is invaluable. We thank you very much for it.
We had a serious bet that you were in that big teddy bear clown outfit, but it didn't quite work out. You weren't hugging right. I knew something was wrong.
Yeah, we did have one council member in a bear outfit.
Yeah. Okay. Mayor and Council, I'm Shane Peachman, President of the Hyde Creek Watershed Society. We are asking for access to the Spirit of Coquitlam grants or other casino funds. See Appendix A, letter and email reply. 31% of our current membership reside in Coquitlam. 62% of Hyde Creek Watershed Society Watershed is in Coquitlam. See slide 1. We're just in the green spot way down on the bottom. All the other space up there is Coquitlam. 59% of School District 43 classes are from Coquitlam. See Appendix B and slides 2 and 3. Okay. Okay, recognition in Coquitlam as listed on my presentation. You have to look at my presentation because you weren't allowing me to talk very long. Okay, Hyde Creek Watershed work in Coquitlam. Stocking of Hyde Creek Watershed with coho salmon fry began in 2003 with the Hyde Creek Watershed Society, and previously with the Hyde Creek Streamkeepers. Coho runs have increased substantially. Slide 5 and see Appendix C. You probably know the guy in this picture. Coquitlam construction sites. Slides 6 and 7. Okay, monitoring is consuming. The impact on our watershed was dreadful. Builders sent workers to our hatchery for a tour and discussions of runoff problems. Okay, Coquitlam's recent storm water management regulations have minimized environmental damage to our watershed. Thank you. I caution that we need strict enforcement on future building sites as the slopes become steeper in Upper Hyde and Partington Creeks. Coho rearing pond at Hyde Creek and Highland, slides 8 and 9. A slide upstream has repeatedly filled in the channel. Hyde Creek Watershed members monitor this area. Westbelt signees recognize our efforts in this area. Creek cleanups during DFO summer windows, slides 11 and 12. Cleanup north of Highland at Hyde Creek, slide number 13. Fish rescue during dry creek times, slide 14. Bank failure slide into Hyde Creek north of Harper. This is in the district of Coquitlam. It is an environmental disaster affecting fish in our hatchery directly. If you look at Appendix D, slides 15 and 16. Sand, silt cause slant sandbars and drying access in creek and excessive loss of salmon. Hatchery equipment requires continual repair and replacing. That was first noted out 10 years ago. Fisheries have been up there. The city of Port Coquitlam was up there. I've taken everybody up there. We first thought it was a really good idea because it provided a lot of sand to the heavy rock and boulders up in the upper part of Hyde Creek. But it's as disastrous as it gets down below at the Hyde Creek because that's where the creek meanders and all the sand and silt fills sandbars the whole creek. So sand and silt causes sandbars, drying areas in the creek, and excessive loss of salmon. Hatchery equipment requires continual repair and replacing. Spawn requires yearly dredging from Port Coquitlam, slide 17. Note the depth of the pond. They dredge it down 5 feet, and within 3 months, as soon as the rains come, we're standing in that same area that was 5 feet deep, and now it's already filled up. And we're trying to get our brood stock out of this pond pool. We have talked with Westbuild and Incon regarding the stabilization of the slide area in their 2016 project, because Westbuild bought this property in last year, but expect this problem of the sand and silt to continue for a number of years because it will take so much rain and forceful storms to wash all the sand out into the DeBabo Slough. Right now it's being hung up from just upstream of Hyde Creek all the way through to the DeBabo Slough because there's not enough force. It's too much like it's a delta. Okay, drying creek solutions, as noted in my presentation. During 2015, there were only 2 creeks in our watershed that did not dry out. Watkins Creek, again, if you read the presentation, you'll know more about it, but thanks to Incon Environmental for redirecting all the creek water from basically the very top of the mountain all the way down, and Watkins had water. Smiling Creek, thanks to Incon and Westbuild, again, redirecting water that was subsurface into Smiling Creek, which provided us a place to put salmon coho. 2 creeks keep salmon fry and smolts alive. Unfortunately, these creeks are east of our hatchery and do not assist our needed water. Parcel D9, Highland and Hyde Creek. Hyde Creek Watershed is currently working with Westbuild and Incon to redirect all storm and groundwater into the new marine pond and channel that runs into Hyde Creek. This will assist the creek with year-round water and will directly benefit our hatchery. Slides 9 and 19. And Gino, come on. Parcel, this is the one that excites me the most. There's a 50-acre parcel west of Hyde Creek at Highland from Oxford all the way up to Coy. I am working with Westbuild and Incon to achieve a similar plan. In other words, as parcel D9 is, in other words, is trying to direct all the water in that 58 parcel, and it all slopes naturally to Hyde Creek, into the upper sections of Hyde Creek, so that we'll have continual water. Summary. 5 minutes. Hyde Creek is reaching out to Coquitlam at a critical time that demands our mutual commitments to ensure that the chum and coho salmon survive in our creek and Hyde Creek and Partington watersheds. We will continue to monitor and perform within these watersheds. We will continue to liaison with developers and environmental consultants to ensure that the rainwater and groundwater is collected and directed to our creeks, which will greatly assist in the survival of our chum and coho salmon. The slow release of these waters through permanent settlement ponds is essential. Stormwater alone directed to creeks causes flash flooding and erosion in heavy rains. I strongly recommend you read my big version of this thing and look at all the pictures. And any councillor, any mayor that wants to take tours up in the Coquitlam area to see how much we do, like I said, I've been involved with these guys since 2001. I've been a director since 2004. I helped design and build and fundraise. We raised over $400,000 in 3 years to build that hatchery. We've raised over $1 million since we first started to get what we've got. And we've done it all without Coquitlam's help, except for recognition. Port Coquitlam gives us lots of money in kind, and they also given us a lot of money in the past. But the fact that where our hatchery is situated and how much we're involved in Coquitlam is a very good case that you people should probably help us with. Thank you. Any questions? I went on too long.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Peachman. Councillor Asmundson?
Shane, the one you're talking about, the feeding Hyde Creek, that's the property at the end of Highland and Princeton. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, the old Holga property.
That's just clear. That's the one up for application that by the development.
Also D9.
Would redirect a lot of water into Hyde Creek to give it a flow.
Yeah, Mike and myself have already dug some pre-ground ditches in there. We've got all the surface water running to that pond, but we realize there's a lot of water subsurface right at the till level. So I'm working with Westbuild and Incon to ensure that we get all that water to where we really need it, into Hyde Creek.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that people understood where that property was.
And the bigger parcel is the one on the other side of Hyde Creek, that 50-acre parcel. which probably you guys, a lot of you people don't know, but it's just an incredible big piece of property that slopes all towards Hyde Creek in the upper section.
Councillor Wilson.
I just want to thank you for all the great work that you and your organization does. We're very lucky, and it's just amazing the passion and the commitment you all have. What if we were going to consider providing some funding for your organization? What is it? Do you have anything specific that you're looking for?
Okay, we started building the hatchery in 203, 4, and 5. There's things wearing out. Our predator netting over top of the pond, which is 75 feet by 45 feet, it's pretty near done. We're redirecting money to repaint inside so it makes it better up in the classroom where we have all these all our classrooms. Like we said, 59% of our school district, 43, and a lot of other people go through our hatchery throughout the year. The Salmon Festival is a big event. We do a lot of fundraising. We're 60 volunteers. We're all volunteers. The only money we get from fisheries is $4,000. It costs us $10,000 to $12,000 a year to run our hatchery. We run it like a business. There's some really dedicated volunteers that make this thing happen. We are the biggest hatchery and learning center in Lower Mainland run by volunteers, and we're really proud about that. Okay, there is items, there's pumps, there's all kinds of things that we're replacing on a yearly basis. Fishery keeps on suggesting that they may stop some of our funding. So now we clip our coho fry so they become smoked, so we can hopefully ensure that we're going to get $4,000 a year. But the other $6,000 to $7,000 or $8,000 we get from tours, and I go out and do a lot of begging up the hill with the contractors. Whenever they do something wrong, I'm right in their face, and they usually give us some money.
Thank you.
There's lots of items. We would like your help. Like I said, we get a lot of help from the city of Port Coquitlam, and for good reason. It makes everybody look environmentally responsible. But we'd ask you guys to get environmentally responsible in 62% of our watershed that is in Coquitlam by helping us.
Right, Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thanks. And I had a tour of your facility as I'm bike riding earlier this year, and it happened to be open and got in. It's very impressive. The classroom space upstairs is kind of a little jewel up there.
Oh, it is.
Beautiful classroom area. What's the... there's a vision, I imagine, that's driving you. Is it to have water flows reflect what naturally were occurring in the past before development, or to improve on those water flows so there's never any chance of anything drying up as it might have dried up naturally? Or what's your goal here? What's your vision?
Okay. Let me back up. Before the development up Burke Mountain happened, there was a slow release of water going into the creeks. Slow. So after a rain or a storm, weeks after a rain or a storm, we would have continual flow of water within Hyde Creek. That is not what happens right now. The city of Coquitlam has redirected all the runoff water, all the surface water, all the water to the creeks. And that sounds, that's really exciting, but it just goes it just blows right through our system, which causes a lot of problems which we've had to work with. So now we have to think of an idea of getting areas and ensuring we get water into the creek from the places that we haven't got into yet. Hyde Creek is one thing. Partington is a really exciting watershed that we are now adopting. We've been stocking fish for the last 3 years. This year, in fact, the other day we just put 3,500 fry in there. Last year we put 12,000. The year before we put over 12,000. Partington has got so many fingers, tributaries, that the development will not affect the upper section of Partington Creek. Hyde Creek has only got 1 or 3, they got 5 tributaries, but they all kind of end up at the top end of Hyde Creek. So it doesn't, as Westfield goes further and further up the mountain and they turn around and develop up into the park, every opportunity that they get, they've got to redirect the water, especially the steeper sections, to the creek and hopefully leave enough land so that they can, it is a slower release. Settlement ponds are the biggest thing. There's not very many settlement ponds in Hyde Creek on Burke Mountain. There is, but there's not many. And when you're trying to realize of what we had and what we have right now is one of the biggest reasons why we have the problem that we have. Yet, we didn't have much snow melt last year and we didn't have much rain. That's why we lost so many fish. There wasn't a native coho that existed that lived in Hyde Creek last summer. They all died. Every coho all the way up the mountain died from our hatchery above. That's never happened before. Now it happened because of no snow and no rain. So we have to really be careful. We have to try to...
So my question was whether you're trying to recreate natural cycles here, whether you're trying to improve on what natural cycle from a human point of view, so there's always enough water there and nothing, even if there's a drought, nothing will ever go bad. Everything. I don't quite understand what your end game is here.
Our end game, we have the one good thing that saved our hatchery is a well, which we originally put in 1999, and then it went kind of dry because it was in the wrong area, and we redrilled the well in 2012 and 13. Without that well, our hatchery could not survive. Okay? So
that well is
No, that is...
I'm trying to understand the basic driving philosophy here in terms of you're talking about what you want to see up the mountain and everything like that. What's underlying your vision here? I mean, the well is obviously not a natural phenomenon. There are no natural wells that feed spawning grounds or anything like that. So what I'm trying to understand is what you're asking, or what your vision is. Is it trying to create enough water flow that it mimics nature or improves on nature, or is it facts? I'm not sure. And then I really trying to understand that.
Okay, Jerry, what we're trying to do is try to make sure we don't lose any more water flows that naturally come out of the forest. Okay, almost all the development so far has gone east of Hyde Creek. We have an opportunity where we engulf both sides of Hyde Creek as we go up the mountain from Highland up. And as we do that, there's certain big areas that we have to collectively put our heads together to ensure that we gain as much water as possible before we have to crank on that well. The well is it's our thing that makes us survive. But the groundwater and the rainwater has to be collected, and we are doing it. We could do a better job.
Okay, thank you.
That's all, Councillor O'Neill?
Yep.
Mayor Stewart.
I'll begin again by thanking the Society for the work you do, both in Port Coquitlam, where your hatchery is, but of course for the entire watershed, most of which is in Coquitlam. Our challenge, of course, is that you built it in Port Coquitlam. And so it is awkward when we get requests to fund something that is outside of our community, and that's where we're going to wrestle here. We're going to try and figure out how to do it, because we all support the work that you folks do. We want those fish to be thriving in both in Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam, because the fish don't seem to care about the municipal boundary. To some degree, we're going to need you to tailor your requests so they can meet the criteria, and we may have to get staff to give us some guidance on how to alter the criteria to make sure that an organization like yours, which is unique, we don't have that many organizations where their membership is not necessarily Coquitlam, but their work benefits Coquitlam so significantly. So it's not really a question. It's more of we've got to work together to try to figure out how we can make investments in the facilities. We have in the past. We're trying to. I want us to continue to find ways to do that, and so. I see some nodding from our General Manager of Parks and Recreation, who, of course, is also on the funding side. So that's it.
I thank you. I think that's the only way we could ever, I talked to a lot of the councillors and the mayor, obviously, and it's a lot better to make a presentation and you just realize that why we think we're really special as Hyde Creek Educational Center and Hatchery. I mean, we serve both communities really well. I personally get involved with more stuff in Coquitlam than anybody else, because that is my passion, to make sure that I can work with everybody up the mountain and get us water. The rest of it, and besides trying to take care of a hatchery, that part is exciting. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's exciting to work with you. It's there. We can work together. We can make this happen.
I don't think that our residents understand the amount of work that goes into the amount of work and passion private citizens have unpaid, the hundreds of thousands of dollars of benefit that we as a community accrue from the work that you do. So I'm glad you're here, and we've got some work to do.
Just wondering, did you apply for a spirit grant recently?
No, because when you read through your presentation, I turned around and I wrote a letter to the mayor after conversations with him, and then he submitted that to your spirit grant person, and she denied us. And then we got an application from your grant application, so we didn't even fill out the grant application, because until I get over this hurdle, there's no sense in even going there. You've got to come to some kind of conclusion that we're very special, and somewhere you have to tweak your application, or so that we can actually get through so somebody would actually even look at our application. Because we did a well, we asked for money. May couldn't believe that we didn't get money for that well. When we were building the building, we did the same thing. We didn't get the money. So we got to get over that hurdle. And once you guys agree that we are worthy of getting some funds, and then we can definitely make a presentation for you to give us a hand once in a while.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Pitchman.
I'm not supposed to get this passionate when I talk. I'm supposed to be a lot calmer. Thank you.
Thank you.
We would have been surprised.
The next item on the agenda is a delegation. I would like to invite Mr. Dave Ginter of CUPE Local 561 to please come forward. Mr. Ginter will be discussing the proposed restructuring of the Coquitlam Public Library.
Thank you for allowing me to come.
Thank you. I'm just going to pass the chair to Mayor Stewart. If you
Do
don't
I
mind
need-
for a minute.
Thank you. And welcome on behalf of Council. I do want to, of course, the preamble that you've heard before is the Library Board is established by virtue of legislation. The Library Act requires that a municipality that establishes a public library also appoint a public library board, which is autonomous from the municipality. And I gather from your comments here that you are speaking about things to us that are under the purview of the library board. And so, notwithstanding that we're passionately interested in the provision of library services here, I'm not certain the role that we'll have in this, but we're certainly willing to listen. So thank you.
Well, you can correct me. You do provide the funding for the library, don't you?
That's it, yes.
That's supposed to be where I'm going to be coming from? Funding. Thank you for allowing me to come tonight, or today. My name is Dave Ginter. I am a resident and president of CUPE Local 561, which the library is one of our units, one of our smaller units. And I have Allison with me, Hardman. She's the shop steward there for the library. And so I want to talk about the restructuring process. We first found out about the restructuring process plan, as you call it. My understanding, it's being talked about by the library board for at least 2 years on May the 2nd. We were going into bargaining on May the 9th. The restructuring I'm talking about is you're creating 6 exempt manager positions. And how you're going to fund those positions are obviously you take away 6 CUPE jobs. These positions are publicly posted, so some of our members may get them, they may not. They may be filled by all outside applicants. So that's 6 people without a job. They may choose not even apply, but that will cause a massive bumping situation. When you lay people off in a union setting, you use your seniority and you bump. I know for sure that some of those people don't want to go into that role and will not apply for those positions. It's entirely the library board's discretion whether they want to hire any of the positions. The key point is that I want to talk about consultation. I've been in this business a long time, and usually when you're doing a reorganization of this nature, and particularly when you're so close to bargaining, when you're doing management versus CUPE or any other union, that's where you do it at the bargaining table. You have the consultation, you either try to come to an agreement. If you don't, then it goes to the labor board, okay? That's just the nature of the beast. If you don't get an agreement, the labor board under section 139 will do it. If the parties couldn't have got a deal at the table, I mean, once you look at all the positions and see what fits and what doesn't, maybe some did, maybe some didn't. But at the end of the day, you go to the labor board. We will be left to go to the labor board for 7 positions. The 6 you created plus 1 you created last year. In our mind, there is nothing different in the positions. Here's the difference in the positions. All you put in there is the right to hire, fire, and discipline. That's what you put in. That's what makes it the management position. The duties are the same, okay? The duties, doing the books, doing that kind of stuff. So you've hired, whatever it is, it'll come out to 10 managers for a bargaining unit of 70, and 30 of them are full-time, the rest are part-time and auxiliary. When you compare this anywhere to any other library, take a look at the structures. They don't fit. The Vancouver Public Library has 750 people. They have, if your ratio is 1 to 25, here it'll be 1 to 4. So you figure it out just on the numbers and the increase the cost, because I know you cost the library, so you must have gave them money to do this reorganization, which is your purview to do. But my point is that, of course, I'm concerned about the labor board costs. I already know, I've done these things before, and I've already talked to labor. This will be 21 days of hearing. These lawyers don't come cheap. They're $4,000 a day. So even before you got to include those kind of costs into your structure. And if you're doing it for hiring, for the discipline and work performance issues that you've had 1 work performance issue last year, 1 work performance issue the year before that required any discipline. So it's not a bargaining unit. Like that there's a lot of work performance discipline issues where you need managers to hire and fire and discipline. And just take a look, you increased 2 years ago on your excluded staff there and took somebody out of the bargaining unit for discipline and that. And I say the discipline and the work performance issues don't fit the need. You also got to include the cost. If you do have a human resource manager there, you can be pretty sure her wages will increase significantly. The reason why is because excluded managers that look after other excluded managers receive extra money. It's understandable, the responsibility. I'll lay you money that position on the human resource manager will increase at least 50%, just based on where I've seen other local excluded staff. That's an increase. So for the last 2 years, you've been cutting at the library because you've been broke, you didn't have any money, and we need money for technology. That's what we were told. We've lost about 8 or 9 positions, and the reason is because you were going to restructure for technology. The only way we could pay, they said, is to reduce CUPE positions to get the money for technology. I don't think that was the reason at all now when I see the structure here. So our concern is there should have been consultation and go through the right process, the bargaining process. You only had to wait 7 more days to get into that process. But no, you chose to do it on May the 2nd.
Clarification here,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. He keeps saying you, and you.
Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting that you don't run the library. Sorry about that. That's my fault.
It's almost like you want to
All right.
think you're presenting.
We've got
Yeah.
we've
So
got the
please
gist.
don't. Wait.
No, but you would have been aware of the changes because you proved the money.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Ginter. Just
I understand. Hey,
we won't say. We
I apologize for the
Okay.
referring to you. So that's the issue that we have. Is there any rationale why these positions will cost, our estimate is $600,000 for an excluded staff of that size? And I would say if the library board is looking at one manager for 4 CUPE employees, that I understand management positions very, very clearly. Most of the time, you need managers if you have a lot of work performance issues, and the reason you need them to be excluded is because they have the power to discipline. I understand that. This is not a bargaining unit where you have that. So the reason I came tonight is because the library board wouldn't hear me. So it was suggested by a taxpayer that maybe I could come here and inform you at the cost, because you do the funding. You've actually approved the fund, or the funding part is yours, but not, and I agree, the management of the library is a different flavor.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ginter. Mayor Stewart, you had the first comment.
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate Councillor O'Neill's comment.
Yeah.
I was actually counting. Once you started with you, I
understand.
you said 30 times you, and you said twice the library board. Now, the library.
I shouldn't blame everything on you.
Well, you can't blame anything in this case because we.
I understand.
There wasn't a financial request that I can find in the financial plan for anything related to this.
Okay.
The financial request in the financial plan, I believe, related to a capital element. Well, no, it was an operating request, but it wasn't related to this. So typically we don't get involved in that sort of thing. The library board runs the library autonomously. Sometimes they'll ask us for something like security or some cameras or some shelves or whatever, and of course we passionately invest in libraries. As you know, we spent an awful lot of money with a brand new library in our city center, and I know that the increased services and of course the increased library staff provide great service to our residents. But I do want to make you, I know you're aware, but I also want, there's thousands of people watching this live on television right now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Or dozens maybe.
Then they can make it very clear that I do apologize for stepping out of the box and putting you in, the word you in.
Yeah, because you've hired or you've created, that's not us, it's them. But I do, so I urge you to go back and continue to dialogue with the employer in this case, because we simply give them $4.5 million a year, that's it. And they run a library.
Okay, I understand that you say going back and talk to them?
Well, they're the only people, the library board runs the library. We fund the library in the same way that we fund lots of other services that aren't run by us, including garbage collection or whatever.
Well, the difficulty was they don't want to talk to me.
I have no comment there, but I do urge you to, the dialogue has to be with the employer.
Well, okay, if that's what you're saying.
Councillor Wilson, you're next.
Thanks. So you're do you have an idea of why this reorganization is happening?
That's the problem. I don't have it. May 2nd, they just announced that they were doing a reorganization that is being discussed for the last 2 years. That was the announcement they made. Okay?
Right.
As I said, I really think in comparing with the other libraries in the excluded staff and the numbers are way off kilter. You would be the most expensive excluded ratio staff for excluded.
By you mean the library board?
Yeah, the library board. They would be. And the difficulty is, as I said, in the normal process, is this type of reorg or versus management, CUPE or union is usually done at the bargaining table where the union actually has the right to negotiate the working conditions. But they announced on May 2nd, so that's where it didn't get discussed at bargaining.
And so they were trying to avoid this be an issue in bargaining?
Would it be an issue in bargaining?
In your opinion, they were trying to avoid having this become an issue?
Yes. In my mind, it was a way not to have that consultation. Yeah, that's strictly the way I took it, because you could have waited 7 more days and opened up the bargaining, and those type of, that's where those issues are on. And the fact that it's been going on for 2 years without any communication is very unusual for any unionized place.
And then when you were talking about how it affects funding, you figure it would be a 21-day period.
For arbitration, this will be, because you do, at the labor board, you will do each position, this position, and there will be 7 there. And on the normal thing of the labor board, it'll be 21 days, no less than 21 days to resolve it, and they'll make a decision at the end of the day whether or not they have the right to exclude those positions from the bargaining unit.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. I actually had a question for staff. I think Mayor Stewart spoke that this isn't employee negotiation, and bargaining is not part of what the council does, but I'm just wondering, as part of that, maybe to Mr. Dumont, as part of the stipulation, I think we have a member on the board of the library board from the city of Coquitlam. Are we obliged as a board or as a participant on the board to hear the employees in that environment? Like, does the library board have the ability to say no to the audience? Because I can see that the reason that they're here is because they were frustrated that they couldn't get a hearing from the library board. So do we have an obligation through the charter to hear
No,
at the board level?
I don't believe that we do. Our, as you said, our representation is through our appointment to the library board.
Okay.
And that particular person can communicate back to council, but I don't think that puts an obligation on council. It's a separate employer, and it has been stated we shouldn't be involved in the management of the staff there. That's to be done through the library and through the library board.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, Councillor O'Neill had a comment.
Yeah, just an explanation, because prior to Councillor Asmussen, I was the library board representative from council. And actually, it's not really a representative, it's the appointee from council. We don't represent a city position, we don't represent council, we have no obligation to report back to council. We're a citizen of Coquitlam that is appointed from council to be on the board. And we're a full member of the board, not just the council rep or not just a city liaison or anything like that. Sometimes you do facilitate meetings between library people and somebody at City Hall, or library people and somebody somewhere else because of your contacts and who you know and things like that. But as a library member of the board, it's just like any other library member of the board, except this is an appointed one from council, that's all. So that's how it was explained to me how I acted, and I believe Councillor Asmussen's acting the same way. So no obligation to report back, nothing like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone have a financial plan?
Item 4 is a report concerning the Centennial Activity Center extended closure impact update. We have introductory comments by the General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture Services.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Alueva and Ms. Morrison-Clark. Hello.
Hello, thank you. Through the chair, just very quickly, I want to some quick comments, and Mary is here to provide a little bit more detail. Her staff have been working closely with School District 43 representatives. I do want to thank the School District representatives. They've been very, very supportive following the last session we had. That we all went back to the drawing board. They did make the remaining gym at at the Centennial Activity Center available for the city. So that was a significant change, and they've had to now relocate their programs. I believe that was discussed at this table. Thank you very much for council for their strong encouragement to go back. And as you know, we did want to bring something back to council as soon as possible, given that it's July 1st when some of the changes begin to happen. So our latest results, as demonstrated in this report, is that we're very happy that the majority of the programs and services and overall revenues and costs are very, very close. And we think we're going to be in good shape. Of course, until you get into this, on the micro detail level, are we going to know exactly the amount of registrations, et cetera? But we feel that we've had a very good response from the school district, and in our minds, the school district has met their obligations under the JUA, at least in the spirit, and certainly they've made all efforts they could to accommodate the city and our rights within the joint use agreement. We'd certainly offer any details and answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Marsden first.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear comments about the school district with regards to their work with the joint use agreements, because I think that's something that certainly your department's been working with them on to try and improve that working relationship. So I'm glad to hear the positives. On page 2 of the report, you're talking about the programs, the drop-ins, and the registered, and obviously a vast majority of the drop-in is Coquitlam resident, 83%. Any idea that the numbers of drop-ins? Like 83% are Coquitlam residents, but in terms of
absolute numbers?
Absolute numbers?
Actually, in the paragraph through the chair on page 2, 12,000 people use the facility annually.
Okay, but so again, what percentage of that is drop-in and which percentage is registered is the question I have, because from a revenue perspective, the concern I would have is that, the drop-ins expected to be there. They just show up. So what do we need to do that maybe we haven't addressed yet in terms of additional costs for advertising to let people know of the relocation of some of these pieces? Somebody's used to showing up at CAC, dropping in, and now there's nothing there. That's where the revenue stream is going to drop off, and I don't know where we measure that. So of the 12,000, how many are drop-ins and how many are actual registers? Do we know that number yet?
Through the chair, I can certainly get that information for council this week. Most of our programs run through the One Pass there, so it is drop-in. And we've been telling participants verbally and with signage on site of the changes, and we're working with corporate communications to get further messaging out now that we know where the programs go. Okay. Yes, we're relying on corporate communications, but I will get you those numbers.
Okay, so the vast majority is One Pass, so they've paid their fee anyways. It's not, right. If they show up and it's not there and they choose not to go someplace else, it's not a revenue drop, they'll change their behavior for the following week or the following day. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, it depends on the type of One Pass that has been purchased. Right. If it's an all-inclusive 1 month or 1 year versus a 10 pass, 50 pass swipe, okay, then the revenue does get allocated differently. Okay.
My concern was just want to obviously make sure that we're communicating to the residents that if this is a big number that is suddenly going to show up and it's not there, what are we going to do to make sure that they are redirected in the right place to take advantage of it? I appreciate all the work that's been done to find alternative venues. I want to make sure that we can communicate it appropriately so they're not negatively impacted. Okay, thanks.
Right. Very good work, and thank you for
thank you very much.
Thank you for securing that.
Thank you for council's direction and support.
Okay, we're all in favor of what is our recommendation?
I move receipt.
Second.
Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Marsden. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Item 5 is a 2016 Canada Day and annual festivals and events update report. It's before you for information.
Hello. Very nice to see you.
Thank you.
All right. Are we having an introduction?
Well, I didn't intend to, but if I can, if for those that I'm sure all council remember Karen Bassey, our manager of culture, I guess. Culture services? Culture services or cultural services? I'm not sure.
Cultural.
Welcome, Ms. Bassey.
In any event, we're here to answer.
Deja vu.
We're here to answer any questions.
With either title, she doesn't care.
All right. Well, we can move right to receipt then. unless anyone has. I guess I have, it's moved by Councillor Asmundson.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Neal. I had just one note. Obviously, it was about accessibility and washrooms. So our location is a little farther away from the washrooms that are at the track area. Do we have washrooms, accessible washrooms, and where will they be located?
Through the chair, I can't give you details on exactly where they're located. We're still refining the site location. We've had only one opportunity to actually get on site with a new plaza construction happening there. There will be accessible toilets there that we will be renting from a company and place them on site.
Right. That was really it. I know that the accessibility committee is very interested to know if it's going to be even more accessible than it was in the other location. So it'll be interesting to see. Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Marsden had something.
Thanks. The 2017 cultural event that's listed here is the assumption that it might be the evolution of the Kaleidoscope Festival, or is that potentially something completely different?
Through the chair, I think that what we're looking at as staff is just looking at a number of different potential opportunities that we could perhaps bring forward to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, or I should say Cultural Services Committee, to get their feedback on some possible options for 2017. So nothing is being identified. We're trying to come up with a list of potential options to be evaluated. And that would potentially also include Kaleidoscope.
Because that was one of the features of the festival, was that it was sort of planned to, or at the time it was envisioned that it would be an ongoing festival. So, thanks.
Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick points. On page 7, it speaks to managing the flow of work of events to reduce the stress on park assets. More operational, but for third-party events, do we get damage deposits for potential damage to turf, et cetera, like that? I know there was a lot of talk about that in Vancouver a number of years back.
Yes.
So,
yes, we do.
Thank you very much. And on page 8, I'd love to see the insurance company putting their fingers into the pie and ensuring that they get some money when we try to encourage people to get together and have block parties. $150 a pop. Is there a manner in which, and I'll just throw it out to you, that we can perhaps recognize some of the block parties without having to classify them as a civic one and not have to pay the $150? I'm just looking, if there's no road closure, my neighborhood has been having one for years and it's just in somebody's yard. So recognize it as part of the 125, but you don't have to close roads. The liability perspective is really on the homeowner throwing the party.
Well, we've explored it. I went through about 2 months of back and forth with the insurance underwriters to explore different opportunities and different possibilities. Unfortunately, the position of the underwriter is once the city is acknowledging those as a block party, part of the block party challenge, we essentially have given it some kind of a rubber stamp. And so whether or not it's on private property or taking place in a park, it doesn't make a difference in their eyes, unfortunately.
So that because we recognize it, we're taking on some level of liability.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor O'Neill, you have the last word.
Oh, yeah, sorry. There's a question. Throughout the report, it made reference to the Town Centre Plaza. There have been some discussion in past months about what exactly this Performance Plaza was going to be called, and I thought we'd sort of settle on Performance Plaza. It's the Town Centre Performance Plaza, but it's now the Town Centre Plaza, period?
I think we had landed on Town Centre Plaza. That was, I believe the name that we had landed on. I think it was suggested. It had been used as the kind of the condensed version of the site. There are a number of extended and lengthier versions, as was raised last time. I think we landed on Town Centre Plaza as the final name, and we believe it's easily recognizable as the plaza, but people would call it Town Centre Plaza, and that's...
All right, so from this moment forward, we shall refer to it as the Town Centre Plaza.
There have been no official announcement or notification to us?
No.
This is it in this report? We now know from here on? Just
yes.
Councillor Zerlo said it's...
Henceforth, it shall always be named as the Town Centre Plaza.
And you will be corrected every time it doesn't happen.
Unless changed at this table. Right.
I'm wanting to talk there, so I'm going to give her the opportunity.
Okay, good.
since it is an exciting time.
Sorry, I just want, we were going to call it the Town Centre Park Plaza.
Yes.
Because there's no, as Kathleen Vincent had pointed, there's no town centre, city centre or town centre park. So we'd actually landed on Town Centre Park Plaza.
Oh, so, sorry.
Sorry.
So it's Town Centre Park Plaza.
Park
Town
Plaza.
Centre Park Plaza.
So the next time we see it, it's going to have an extra word in it.
That's
So
council.
let the record show, Town Centre Park Plaza.
I'm fine with that.
long as you get the accents right.
Let's be clear and
This
consistent.
this would be a good opportunity for council to give us any other direction if they had it. And if through the chair.
All right.
Why would you open that can of worms without
It's
official?
been moved and seconded, this report. All in favor of receiving this report?
Okay.
Anyone opposed? Great, thank you so much. See you on July 1st.
Gotta stay on top of you guys.
Yeah.
In other words, this isn't a forum for any introduction of new names.
This is not a decision-making table. Okay. Madam Clerk.
The first other business item concerns Dogwood parking lot and the Coquitlam Farmers Market and was raised by Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. This one I brought forward. Obviously, council was in receipt of a number of emails from residents and attendees at the recent farmers market. Mr. Centennial had provided some what I think is great information in terms of some of the behind the scenes and how we landed where we landed. But my question was more, having not been on council in the past for discussions about the farmers market. I certainly see that there's a significant component of the community likes farmers markets. They attend them here. They attend them all over the place, and it is quite the business venture that people sell their wares at various markets across the Metro Van. But I have, in talking to some of the vendors, they've talked in the past about wanting a long-term home. Is this long-term? And so I was a little unclear in terms of what the dialogue has been in the past. Is this our long-term home? Do we see this being the spot for the market? Is this do we see them outgrowing it as this becomes more and more viable, as we see densification and people not being able to have perhaps gardens in their own yards? Do we see this as being the place, or is this a stopgap towards something greater? And just for general information for myself. Thank you.
Mr. Aliweva.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, these events they're long-standing events in the city. They're very well attended. We do support them through our role acting on behalf of council and in finding, in this case, and the markets always sought essentially a location that it's a seasonal, weekly event, and largely they've been successful in finding in using a parking lot and parking area. It's worked reasonably well. It also works reasonably well in terms of the cost structure of that. So to date, it's worked reasonably well. But at the end of the day, it is a parking lot, and I think that's part of the issue is we need to manage our parking areas as well, and in some cases we need to do some work in those areas, and eventually it could lead to an inherent conflict. To date, the use of a parking lot has worked well, and it's worked reasonably well because it is essentially a 24-week, once a week event. Having a purpose-built, area for something like this is likely beyond what has ever been envisioned at this point, given the size of the market, and it's been reasonably well accommodated. So there has been no real discussion, and the market could certainly also find alternate locations if they feel that, like within Coquitlam, if they felt that this did not work well. We feel we can continue to accommodate them in this fashion. At this point, I guess to answer your question in a maybe long-winded way, we had not previously sought or been asked by the by the current Farmer Market Society to seek a permanent location, likely because from the cost perspective, their role in terms of making something like that happen, and the role of the city taxpayer and this council, it would mean land, it would mean likely allocating specific space, and then you think of the utility of a once a week event and building a specific site for that. We do have event sites, for instance, throughout the city. Some are smaller, Spirit Square, you've got Town Center Plaza will be built. Some of these, but they're not really amenable. I'm sorry, Town Center Park Plaza. It's going to take me a couple of days to remember.
It's new.
So we have not, it is not a priority. My apologies. It is not a priority item for us at the moment. We've got a lot on our plate, and it's something that's been working well up until a couple of weeks ago. Understood. There was some improvements made, and I think there's a sense that earlier discussion probably should have happened with that group in terms of those improvements, and those improvements were important on that parking lot, but it did mean some things had to be shifted around, and I think now we've had our staff go out and some adjustments have been made. There is no current move afoot to find a location for this for the society for a permanent home, and I think that would be a longer term discussion where an existing parking area that we have many available not be available for them to stay in Coquitlam. At that point, I think we'd certainly be open to a direction from council to looking at a permanent site. But we've got many priorities, and this one is not on the radar at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Alloway.
And I wasn't proposing that we put it on the radar. I was looking for back history, because as I go through the market, and I've been through the market a number of times, and my wife loves to go through and buy pies and flowers and all kinds of stuff I wind up putting on the barbecue later that day. I look and I say, what's the scalability of that? As it becomes more and more popular, or is it bursting at the seams? And so we have others. And please don't take I'm proposing that we develop a business case for a once-a-week piece, because I don't know that you could ever build a business case for that. But again, is there other venues across the city that might enable them to grow over time, and if there's been those discussions about where they might be there. So so I appreciate that background information. As far as the recent stuff, I think it's important to recognize that the changes that were made, and again, Mrs. Specie, I think, has addressed that very well, were at the response to concerns of residents in the area about activity that goes on. I think the response was spectacular, and I was very happy to hear a resident come back and say that, you know what, we've noticed the behavioral changes that we wanted to see in the area, so they're feeling safer in their neighborhoods, and I think that's important. That, to me, is key, is that our neighborhoods are feeling safer as a result of change. So I want to thank you for that and the communication back on it. So, thanks.
Stuart, you're next.
Yeah, I do want to thank staff for all the response. I had the opportunity of meeting with the farmers market folks with staff on the parking lot, and I think there was generally a recognition that in hindsight, and the recognition in hindsight was from staff and from the public market or the farmers market folks, that the way they both communicated can be improved, and so that's one takeaway from this. That said, I think they worked out the appropriate solutions. If farmers market I got the impression that if farmers market were presented with that option right now as to whether or not to locate there, they would still locate there, because it has lots of advantages. It has always had curbs that people had to go over, including the one mid-island on the just east of the main parking section on the west side of the parking lot. There's a lawn curb that they have built ramps for, and there's similarly at the south end. I was there on Sunday. None of the merchants, none of the patrons actually raised the question of the improvements or the parking adjustments. So that has passed, and I think the adjustments that we made as a city to the one curb stop, the one tire stop, and the painting of the speed bumps, both of which, I think both of them solved large elements of the challenges that they faced the previous week. So thank you for those improvements. I'm still contemplating whether bollards might be a better approach at that one location where we removed the tire stops, but I'll leave that to staff. And in the end, I think I think we ended up with better dialogue with the farmers market folks. So I'm encouraged by that as well, and I'm encouraged by the fact that we now do seem to have solved the original safety challenges that park staff and with input from the RCMP were working on in the first place. And so hats off around. So,
Councillor Olson.
Thanks, and I'm happy that it's all worked out for the problems we were having. But after all the issues that we had with parking when the forum was being constructed, and it went on for what seemed like over a month, how did we forget to consult with them again? I guess, I mean, it just seemed very surprising that after going through that experience, the same sort of thing happened again. And how do we make sure this doesn't happen in the future?
Mr. Aliweva, do you want to respond?
Yes, and on behalf of staff, because the Strategic Initiatives Department who installed, our group and facilities who installed the barriers really responded to an departmental team that was working on this, and I think there was such a significant focus on making the improvements and planning out where and I think because of the seasonal nature of the market, I think there was it just got lost. And we do have a regular dialogue. Our supervisor at the facility has a regular dialogue with the executive director of the market. But for some reason, it just was just missed from our staff. I mean, I think we all acknowledge that as expressed by His Worship, I think we could have communicated better earlier on. And then following the installation, there was about a week where I think if we'd had dialogue from the market right away, we probably could have acted, but that didn't happen either, and it just kind of threw staff for a little bit of a loop when the feedback came back. But I think we have learned a lesson from that perspective.
Because I don't blame them for reacting the way they reacted.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to me multiple times. I think I would react the same way. So, okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm just going to say in closing, there was some wonderful data that came through on the Parks and Rec Master Plan that talked about markets, and we have a very high percentage of community people. I think it was like over 80% of people are interested in markets, and there's a little bit of unmet demand on markets. And this one, I think, has been around 20 years. Did I hear that this year? It was a 20-year.
Correct.
And some of their studies say it's like $1.5 million a year that comes to Coquitlam based on the market. So Mayor Stewart mentioned the learning, and you mentioned that you've got a learning, but for sure markets are important. It's a community asset to our community, and let's keep that one here. Thank you so much.
We'll do our best.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
The second other business item concerns Lafarge Lake tree work and was raised by Councillor Zerillo.
Yeah, thank you. So we have some work happening at the park this weekend before our fishing derby. I guess we have a fishing derby coming up, but I thought it would be good just to let people know what is happening, to maybe get ahead of some of the questions that might come in earlier in the week if people see activity around the Town Centre Park Plaza.
Yes. So as part of the Town Centre Park Plaza project, part of that project was obviously we're doing lots of work on that part of the on the edge of the lake. It's going to be a spectacular facility, but one of the elements of that project was the removal of about 20 cottonwood trees that are located in that general space. There was a process that we went through to obtain the appropriate approvals, regulatory approvals from other agencies, and we just received those. And so we've now evaluated those trees in terms of those requirements, and we're in a position now to remove those trees over the next few days as part of that project. And so we did advise council that it's important that council is aware of that. Those trees will be coming down over the next week, I think several days, I believe, now that the final approvals have been received from the appropriate agencies and our own consultants around the requirements.
So I appreciate that information for our public, that we have gone through all of the due diligence process and the authorizations have come forward, and that's the activity that they'll see in the park this week.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else? Councillor Wilson?
I'm still not 100% sure why the trees need to come down.
Well, there's a number of reasons. Their location next to the plaza is one reason. These are cottonwoods. Cottonwoods are notoriously, and I don't want to mischaracterize cottonwoods, but they're not the best public tree. They tend to have large limbs that get dropped, and that can be a hazard. They are on the edge, on fairly gravelly material. So first of all, we would never look to replace trees of that nature. They are not the optimal tree, but the original plan was to open up that area as part of the plaza for the space of the actual plaza itself, and just the edge of the plaza to be opened up. So there's a number of reasons why, just in terms of opening up that space for the plaza use, and they had always been understood that we would remove them. There are trees throughout the park that have greater value. So if this was a freestanding cedar tree of some form that could be retained, we would always look to do that. But trees of this type in that location were deemed to be necessary for removal to make this project a success. That was the original intent.
So when we got reports, it said some trees would have to be removed, and I assumed that was where the seeding was going. I never thought along the water. Because those trees have been there for years and years. The walking path has been there.
Yeah.
They haven't been a problem, have they?
There's
other than problems that regular trees.
Yeah, there's regular tree problems. When you have stands of trees like cottonwood, like a stand of cottonwoods, you're going to get some issues from time to time, depending on wind throw, and over time there's potential decay. I would not characterize those trees as having been identified as problem trees, but they were identified because it was necessary to open up that area for the plaza project itself, and because of
Open up for what, though?
because of just for views across the lake, and just to have an expanse around the plaza, blocking views, those kind of things, and because of the value of those trees, also it was felt that was the proper thing to do to make this project a success.
What do you mean the value of those trees? That they're
Cottonwoods as a tree, generally speaking, they aren't the healthiest of trees to maintain around large public gatherings. From our perspective, if you've got stands of trees through paths of this type, they're fine. But in a case where we needed to open up that plaza and you had a number of cottonwoods in that space, it felt it made sense to open it up by removing those cottonwoods. And that was the original intent of the project.
Well, I guess I would argue with the need, but I can understand the desire. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Wilson. Mayor Stewart.
Yeah, I do want to remind council of the September 3rd staff report that in which we dealt with the plaza, and the staff report was somewhat clear that it was intended that you'd be able to have those views, but it wasn't specifically explicit about the cottonwoods. Though at the time, I remember. I probably would have voted against the project if the cottonwoods were staying, because the last thing on earth we want is an assembly occupancy in a park next to the most dangerous type of tree. Almost all of the trees that we lost in parks and in public spaces on October 31st were cottonwoods. The near death, we almost lost a carload of folks when a large multi-limbed cottonwood at Mackin Park toppled onto their car. Cottonwoods are notorious, and the Lanny England, our parks staff and I have had long conversations in the past about, is it possible to eventually transition away from cottonwood in all of our parks and move toward species that are more stable and less subject to life-threatening limb fall and life-threatening topple. from wind blow. And so I would never, I'm not, on the rather than, I'm not suggesting anyone second guessing at this point. We're just, I want to make it clear that I completely support the removal of the cottonwoods because we're now intensifying the park use next to them. And I wouldn't ever want us to have intensive park use or a playground or some other element that is next to a stand of cottonwood trees like the one that's there. This used to be a gravel pit, and so the cottonwoods are rooted in gravel next to an erodible shore lake, a lake shore. This is how you would define the most seriously at-risk root structures, I suspect, and I support the elements. That said, we just received a report from staff that says that the qualified environmental professional that was sent on site to review for nesting, for example, and to make certain that we're meeting all of the requirements, the report came back saying that giving a green light for the removal of those trees this week, and thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsden?
Thank you. Just start at the top and go through. Thanks for the heads up on this. I looked back at it and I took a drive through and took some pictures just yesterday, actually, after the teddy bear picnic to try and get some idea because the number of trees that are coming out. So is it these ones that we see here that we anticipate to be the problem? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So there's a number that are fairly small and there's a couple that are decent size now and perhaps approaching to where there could be a problem. So we're being cautious with regards to the type of tree and its location, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I couldn't have said it much better than that.
You flip down to the next couple of photos. Go ahead. Sorry. So I noticed this is the picture on site, which again shows the shoreline basically empty. So essentially, are we talking about the width of the stage, essentially the 30 meters or so, that's it, that's the strip?
That's generally correct. That is generally correct.
Because I mean, there's a lot of trees along that entire shoreline.
It's the trees then on the front of the stage.
Okay. All right. And so next one. So we can see some other plantings and stuff that is being done in here. I take it those aren't cottonwoods, correct?
That's correct.
So we're not replanting with some of the other challenges. Okay. All right. And again, I appreciate everything's doing to be cautious from a safety perspective. I was a little bit taken aback by the timing to look and say, we approved it all in September, see the pictures and see that, but now, we got everything done in March, I believe it is, and around March, the final okay to proceed. But now we're 60 days later that council's being brought in the loop. I'm a little concerned about that. Again, the optics, there's some concerns about the plaza itself, and there's some concerns, and obviously there's a great deal of tree sensitivity. That the timing on this, I would have preferred to have seen it as soon as we got the word that we're okay to go. Again, it just comes down to timing of communication back to council. It's my greatest concern on this, so we can go and be ahead of this.
Okay.
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 Thank you for those points. I think Councillor Reid also mentioned something a few weeks back about how there is sensitivity in the community around trees, and it seems to be growing. There was a mention today about cottonwoods. Are we still planting cottonwoods? Does the city plant cottonwoods on any, or is it in our bylaw that we will not plant cottonwoods?
I don't have my parks manager here. I don't believe we do that. I'm looking at Richard. No, I'm sorry, because Councillor the Mayor
If
Stewart.
you'd like to follow up,
I will follow up.
yeah.
I will follow up and I can give you certainly a list of the trees that we actually replant, but I don't believe we do. Those are not the best trees to plant, as expressed by His Worship more ably than I can. And this is a very significant issue for us in terms of most of our damage, and we do not want to replant these. So most of the ones that we do, what I will do, I'll send an email to council, kind of noting the trees that we do replant, and have that information for you.
And I could look myself, but I'm interested to know, is it specified in the bylaw that we don't plant cottonwoods? Maybe it should be. All right, that's awesome. Thank you very much.
Move adjournment?
Just before we move adjournment, sorry, you're okay. I think Mr. Seblin maybe has a comment or two.
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize Marnie Burnham, who has worked with us for the last year. This is going to be her last committee meeting. She has decided, I think it was a difficult decision, but she has decided to return to her previous job in the federal government. And I just wanted to thank Marnie for giving us good services last year and wish her well in her future endeavors. So thank you, Marnie.
Thank you, Marnie. And if you don't mind, I'm going to also pass to Mayor Stewart if you'd like to make some comments. But I'd also like to say thank you so much on behalf of Council. Mayor Stewart, did you want to?
Thank you so much, Council. I actually want to know, and I'll look to staff, is there a way that we can, by bylaw, prohibit this from happening?
We can petition the federal government to stop taking, don't think there's anything.
Your presence here has been wonderful. It's been great to have you on the team, and we wish you great success back with the federal government. I recognize things have changed with the federal government, perhaps a little bit, and I don't know if that's part of the realities that you're facing, but we certainly will miss you.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys have just all been so terrific.
Thank you, and best of luck.
Indeed.
We have been adjourned. All in favor?
No.
Oh.
Didn't get second.
I seconded.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yep.
All in favor? Anyone opposed to adjourning?
No.
No, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Moved and
Rock and roll.
seconded.